When the Chicago Bears traded for Chase Claypool, it was a move that absolutely had to be made considering the weak wide receiver class that is in this year's free agency. And we had to get Justin Fields a real weapon other than Darnell Mooney. But so far, Chicago Bears fans are yet to wonder what Chase truly brings to the table and what he is. Is he a star or was he a bust? And was this a horrible trade done by Ryan Poles? This is the truth about Chase Claypool. Now, to find the truth about Chase Claypool, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go to Chase's story, and Chase's story is unlike any other. It's a story of triumph. It's a story of beating the odds on what is possible, all of which Chase overcome to become the player that he is today, and someone who is going to break the odds on what is possible and try to become one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. Now, growing up, Chase, like many athletes, was talented. At the age of 2, Chase was so athletic that he was climbing monkey bars with ease. Then a few years later, he tried gymnastics and baseball, but that was not where his true talents were. His true talents were on the gridiron and on the basketball court. But unlike many other NFL players, Chase grew up in Canada in a town called Appensburg near the Vancouver area. And this was his first title because Canada isn't known for football. It's known for hockey and basketball. Canada did have was something called community football. And at the age of 8, Chase was playing against kids who were much older than him. And Chase dominated. At the age of 10, Chase Claypool scored 10 touchdowns in a game and would have scored more if his coach had not limited his touches. And while Chase was successful in football, his home life was anything but easy. Chase's family had to fight to get food on a table. Chase wasn't poor, but he did face times of difficulty, and there was a time when his family had to rely on food stamps and food banks. At the age of 13, Chase's life changed forever. On an October morning in 2011, Chase's mother woke up Chase to tell him that his sister Ashley had committed suicide. At first, Chase thought this was a dream, but at the funeral, the reality kicked in. Losing a loved one at a young age was devastating for Chase. Chase knew that his sister was looking down at him. Chase's sister Ashley had always encouraged Chase to play sport and had been one of Chase's biggest supporters, and Chase had one mission in life, and that was to make Ashley proud, and that is exactly what he did. While being a beast on a football field, Chase would supplement his game training with his stepbrother Jacob Carberry, who was 5 years older than him, in greasy patches around the horn. These training patches, along with him being the best player in the community football, would help elevate Chase's talent, help him become the creme de la creme of football players in Canada. He was fast, he was speedy, and he was bigger than all the other kids. Chase was going to be amazing in high school, but he needed to be elite. He needed to show out in order to grab the attention from US Scouts, because US Scouts rarely recruit from Canada. And show out he did. In high school, Chase played safety and wide receiver, and as a wide receiver, Chase racked up 1,473 yards and had 18 touchdowns in 12 games. And throughout his high school years, he racked up, and as a senior, Chase racked up 1,473 yards and had 18 touchdowns in 12 games. And throughout his high school years, Chase racked up 2,519 yards, 29 touchdowns, he threw 3 touchdowns, and on defensive side of the ball, he was tied with the team with 79 tackles. However, despite his success in high school, literally being one of the best players in Canada, Chase failed to attract any offers from high schools in the NFL. And all of a sudden, it was starting to look like Chase would be a victim of the lack of attention of football players in Canada, and he would never get the attention of Americans' football programs. That was until he used the power of social media. Mama Chow, a close family friend and the vice president of the league that Chase played in, put Chase's highlights on Facebook with the hope that Chase would grab the attention of programs in the USA. And Chase's stepbrother, Jacob Carberry, was playing a 7-on-7 team with Eddie Ferg, who had formed Air Raid Academy that would often travel to US for 7-on-7, told his coach about how talented his stepbrother was. And all of a sudden, Chase, who was in this dark room with no offers being thrown at him, with the power of networking and social media, the light was starting to show in Chase's life. In Chase's junior season, Chase would earn a spot on the A-rated CAD. Chase would finally get the attention that he deprived of for so long. All of a sudden, US programs were like, who is this monster? Where did he come from? Coach Ferg also started to send Chase's highlights to some D1 schools, and 24 hours later, after he sent his first college tape, Chase got his first offer from Nebraska, and then more and more schools offered Chase a spot on the team. Letters were literally filing and calls were coming in. Offers were starting to roll for a kid who just a year prior had no offers and struggled to get any attention from anyone. After moving offers, Chase, a 4-star recruit according to 24/7 Sports, had offers from schools like Michigan, Nevada, Mississippi State, and Notre Dame, what he would eventually commit to for reasons that, any Notre Dame recruit or fan can understand: the history and the tradition and the football film Rudy. For Notre Dame, getting a player like Chase Claypool was huge, given that he had so much separation at his size and could run a 4.66 40-yard dash, had a 35.1 vertical inch, and people knew that this guy was going to be a beast. But like many college players, it would take Chase some time for Chase to truly get acclimated to the speed of college football, especially coming from travel football and playing in Canada. Chase knew he wouldn't get much time, but Chase still found a way to showcase his talent on special teams, where he led the team with 17 total tackles, and as a wide receiver, Chase would rack up 5 receptions for 81 yards. As a sophomore, Chase would nearly triple his production by playing in 11 games, having 29 receptions and 402 yards, and had 13.9 yards per catch, while also having 2 Ds and competing with fellow wide receivers Freddie Caton and Cameron Smith. In Chase's junior year, he was finally starting to get into the Notre Dame starting role, and he registered 50 receptions for 639 yards and averaged 12.8 yards per catch and had 4 TDs. In Chase's senior season, he would emerge as Notre Dame's top option and one of the best wide receivers in college football, and he would show out that season. In the game against Navy, Chase would have 4 touchdowns, and then in Notre Dame is camping road game against Iowa State, Chase should catch 7 passes for 136 yards and 1 touchdown. He would finish that season with 66 receptions for 1,037 yards, averaging 15.6 yards per catch, and had 13 TDs. After a stellar year at Notre Dame, where Chase would lead with the 7th most receptions in program history, Chase would enter the NFL draft, and there were questions surrounding Chase on what he would be. NFL scouts and teams had Chase as a hybrid tight end or the X wide receivers due to his height, and at the combine, Chase would solidify his position as the X wide receiver with his physicality, where he would run a 4.2 40-yard dash, had a vertical inch of 40 inches, and a 10.6 board jump. These were numbers that were not unheard of since another guy who was 6'4", and that was Calvin Johnson. By luck of the draw, Chase would be drafted by Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, a team known for drafting diamonds in the rough when it came to draft receivers, and they selected him in the 2nd round with the 49th pick, and would essentially be the best move that Chase could imagine at that time, because at that time, Pittsburgh was at its best. They were just coming off a 16-8 season and had finished 2nd in NFC North, and they had an explosive offense in Big Ben, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, and Deontay Johnson. Not to mention they had one of the greatest coach in Mike Tomlin. What they really lacked was that wide receiver who had size and could go up and catch that, and that's why they drafted Chase Claypool. And Chase was nothing but special in his rookie season in the middle of a pandemic. Without a preseason and season opener, Chase on 3rd and 9 lost James Bradbury and Jordan Love, showing the city of Pittsburgh and the NFL that Chase Claypool was a name to watch. And then on, things only went up for Chase. He scored his first touchdown against the Denver Broncos on a deep out by Big Ben, then used his speed to torch the Broncos DBs and topped that off by scoring 4 TDs against the Eagles, and Chase would have finished that season with 9 touchdowns, the highest touchdowns out of any rookie wide receiver, and he was part of the Steelers team that went undefeated. In 2021, Chase's role was expected to grow. He was expected to be that guy. He was expected to have more usage than he did in 2020, but for reasons we all know, that did not happen. And the Steelers offense had a lot of injuries, especially in the offensive line. They had some retirements, and this was a huge detriment to the offense as Big Ben was sacked 40 times. And Big Ben just wasn't good in his last year. He threw 10 picks. He really couldn't launch the ball up down the field, and this really took away from the deep ball, the very thing that Chase was very good at, being that deep threat. Furthermore, in 2021, Matt kind of did his own thing instead of what worked, and that directly impacted Chase the most, as due to Big Ben not throwing it, there was a lot of short passes concepts like shallow routes and screens in which Chase did have success, but when you keep running shallow routes and you keep running short routes, teams catch up on this and they adapt, and that took away from Chase's game and the offense as a whole because it was insanely predictable. Matt Canada really never used Chase as a deep threat or in the red zone. With Chase's size, he was a threat. He was never utilized as a yak guy, and that resulted in Chase's stats falling. Chase only had 2 touchdowns in 2021 instead of his 7 touchdowns that he had in his rookie year. But even though Chase's success fell marginally, his targets fell from 109 targets to 104. His receptions fell from 62 targets to 59 targets. His yards fell from 873 targets to 860 targets. And his catch percentage stayed the same at 52 points. But Chase did improve in some areas. For example, yards per target increased from 8 yards to 8.2 yards. He also had 14 rushes that year compared to 10 rushes the year prior. He also had 73 touches compared to 72 touches the year prior. He also had 13.2 yards per touch compared to 12.6 yards, and he had 956 scrimmage yards compared to 899 yards the year prior, and had 0 fumbles after he fumbled the ball 3 times the year prior. Heading into 2022, drastic changes were made. Big Ben retired, the Steelers signed the Nickelodeon MVP himself, Mr. Biscuit. They drafted Kenny Pickens with a 20 pick. They drafted George Pickens in the second round, and they really tooled that offensive line, getting James Daniels, Mason Cole, and had guys like Kevin Dotson, Don Moore, Chuck Sakuda heading into year 2. And Chase's role really changed from that X wide receiver to the Z wide receiver in the slot where he would replace Juju. And the Steelers felt that with his big body and with his speed, he was going to be a mismatch against linebackers and nickelbacks, and moving to the slot they felt would help Chase get more yards after the catch. However, Chase playing in the slot really looked good on paper, failed on the field, and he struggled to be that guy 2020. He was never really used as a pro route guy. He was never really used as a deep route guy, and moving to the slot backfired for Chase. Chase's yards fell from 14 yards to just 9.7 yards, and Chase's odd that his average depth of target fell from 11.4 yards in 2021 to 9.5 yards in 2022. In the slot, Chase struggled to get open vertical, and the tension between Chase and his coaching staff proved to be too much, and then, as we all know, he was traded to the Chicago Bears. Now, despite Pittsburgh's inability to scheme Chase Claypool, there are some issues in Chase's game that he has to fix if he wants to be that guy in Chicago. First and foremost, at times, Chase tends to catch the ball with his body, and sometimes he comes down with it like he did against the Vikings, or even how he came with it against the Jets, but other times he just misses the ball, and that has to do with his catching technique. And a great example of this has to do against this play against the Jets in a Kenny Pickett touchdown. And Chase had his arms in a wide stance, and by having his hands wide, Chase was using what is called a clap technique, which relies on bringing both of your palms together to essentially tap the ball. The problem with this technique is you're catching the ball at the highest speed with your palms, and that can cause the ball to bounce like it did, and it resulted in a pick. Now, what Chase should have done instead was you should have used what is called the diamond technique, where you bring in your hands close together and you form a diamond. And by doing this technique, your fingers slow down the rotation of the ball, and that allows the receiver to bring it down to their palm. Chase needs to develop this diamond technique so he can high point that ball and come down with Justin Fields' beautiful deep ball passes. And this by no means is an easy fix, but with Chase working with Tyke Turbot, I'm sure he can get it down. And Tyke Turbot is one of the best in the game, having worked with Odell, having worked with Demarius Thomas, and I'm sure under him, Chase can develop in a star. Another aspect in which Chase has to get better at is being more consistent. In Pittsburgh, Chase would have this game where he would have like 4 touchdowns, and he would just disappear and then reappear like he did against the Bucks. And a lot of that has to do with it goes to that scheming Chase to be more successful, but part of that is also on Chase. He has to win. He has to get that separation. He has to win his matchups. Something he's still struggling to do in Chicago. And we see that Chase made a play against the Jets, but then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Chase was nowhere to be seen. And perhaps that probably had to do with the fact that Chase only got 67% of the offensive snaps against the Jets and was playing with the backup quarterback for Simeon, but still, Chase has to get better. And so far with the Bears, Chase only has 12 receptions for 111 yards, and his biggest catch being 32 yards. From a statistical perspective, Chase has been rather underwhelming team that truly lacks any true wide receiver other than Darnell Mooney when he was healthy. I mean, more was expected out of Chase, but not all of this is on Chase. Like Luke Getsy, like Matt Canada, is struggling to get the best out of Chase. Getsy, for the most part, has used Chase as that in short routes, like the wide receiver's screen. He's used Chase in the flat / quick / slant and occasional wide receiver runs, instead of using Chase where he's more successful on the outside, where you can use Chase as that fly / go route on deep routes and use him on slants that are more than 5 yards, use him on stop and goes and comebacks, where Chase can use his speed to outrun DBs. And if Luke Getsy can use Chase as that red zone threat near their goal line, where Chase can be successful at the running back, we can see a lot more production for Chase. And we saw that when the Bears did use Chase as a deep threat, he was successful. We saw it in his first game against the Dolphins. When we put Chase deep, he was a threat, so much so that the Miami Dolphins DBs committed an obvious PI, it should have been called, but it wasn't. And then on the Jets, where Chase had that amazing catch. In order for the Bears to truly get the most out of Chase, the Bears and Luke Getsy need to pass the ball more. Currently, the Bears only pass the ball with 41% of the time, the lowest NFL, while they lead the NFL in yard percentage when it comes to the running game. They need to make sure that Chase is playing on that outside and as that go route. And Chase, he has to improve his catching technique, improve some of the characteristics he had in Pittsburgh, like celebrating on a catch and instead of getting the ball against the Vikings, which cost his team to win. And the Bears actually play music in practice, which they do. Chase can be a really good player. The fact that Chase has beat the odds, the fact that he's battled his way to Chicago, the fact that he's dealt with losing his sister at such a young age, the fact that he was one of the few players from Canada to make it NFL and have 4 TDs in one game, losing one of his great good friends in Dwayne Haskins to getting traded, proves this guy has a trip, and with some help, with some work, he can become a star and help Justin Fields be the best and get this Bears team to a damn Super Bowl. And with that, we have reached the end of this video. Now, if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe if you want more videos like this. They are coming, and let me know your thoughts on Chase so far. And this was one of my best videos that I made, I think. So I hope you guys liked it. And with that being said, peace out and bear down.